Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharpening Report. Did you know that the Hebrew word for violence is actually Hamas? Now, this is used in a couple different ways in the Bible. Sometimes it just means violence as a concept, but other times it seems to be referring to a group that has the name violence or Hamas. And of course, those passages have very important prophetic significance. Also, the flag of Hamas is comprised of all the colors of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and those horses also appear in the Old Testament. And lastly, there is a rare, possibly prophetic event called the Ring of Fire eclipse that is set to occur tomorrow at the time of this premiere. Is it a coincidence that all this is happening at the same time? We're going to talk about all that and much more. But first, in order to catch everyone up, I want to talk a bit about some recent developments in the war in Israel, because that's really what this video is all about. So the Israeli military announced earlier today, and that's Friday, the 12th of October, that they had advised approximately 1 million residents in northern Gaza to relocate south. Now, this action is being taken in anticipation of a targeted operation against Hamas, the militant group responsible for launching brutal attacks on Israel and continuous rocket fire. This strategic move aims to minimize civilian casualties by focusing specifically on Hamas, as they often position their military infrastructure within civilian areas, because that's what cowards do. Now, despite Israel's caution, the United Nations has expressed concerns about the challenges that arise when such a large number of people are moving simultaneously. But of course, as we know, the UN is completely biased or completely against Israel, have been for quite some time, and that's pretty evident. However, as families leave Gaza City, Israel continues to carry out precise airstrikes against Hamas strongholds in southern Gaza. So this emphasizes their commitment to targeting only militant activity and underground infrastructure, while making every effort to differentiate between Palestinian population and the terrorist actions perpetrated by Hamas. But of course, given that Hamas is within the civilian places, it's an impossibility. It's asking Israel to do the impossible. Only strike the enemy and don't strike any innocent people. Now, of course, none of us want that to happen. We don't want any innocent lives lost, but this is war. This is unfortunately what happens. So at least Israel is taking measures to minimize the amount of innocent casualties, civilian casualties. Now, interestingly, Hamas has urged Gazans to disregard Israel's warnings, dismissing them as mere psychological warfare. And many interpret this as further evidence of the group's tendency to use their own people as shields against retaliatory measures. Isn't it interesting how many people we see defending Hamas and standing against Israel, criticizing Israel for putting innocent lives in danger, yet what's Hamas doing right here? I mean, they're actively telling Gazans to stay in the area. Now, reports from Gaza's health ministry indicate significant casualties. However, again, it's important to acknowledge that Israel has been facing aggressive rocket fire and surprise attacks from Hamas, unprovoked. Now, the unfortunate attack by Hamas last Saturday led to a devastating loss of more than 1,300 Israeli lives, with the majority being civilians. In response, Israel successfully neutralized around 1,500 Hamas members, demonstrating their operations precision. Israel's main concern continues to be the militarized infrastructure maintained by Hamas, often hiding underground beneath civilian buildings, much like cockroaches. But that's where they're targeting. The Israeli military has repeatedly emphasized its commitment to protecting innocent lives. So Jonathan Conricus, a spokesperson for the military, stressed the extensive efforts made by Israel to avoid causing harm to civilians, and assured that affected residents would be allowed to return once the conflict is over. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant aptly summed up the challenges faced by Israel in this operation during a press briefing with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. So in that, he highlighted how Hamas militants seamlessly blend in with civilian populations and stated that the terrorists hide among ordinary people. So this further emphasizes Israel's need to distinguish between terrorists and innocent Gazans, and their request for evacuation can be seen as a step towards achieving that goal. And again, that goal is in war, and especially with this kind of enemy, it's nearly impossible to achieve. So what's Israel supposed to do? Just stand down and allow themselves to be attacked, or can they defend themselves? See, this is the ugliness of war. And there's things like this that can't be prevented. The way that it could be prevented is if Hamas, Hezbollah, these groups would just stop attacking Israel. So it's sad to see, in light of what seems obvious to most of us, the criticisms coming against Israel in this time. Now, I mentioned Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been firing rockets at Israel, and Israel has bombed South Lebanon. So here's the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah. Hamas says that it belongs to the Sunni branch of Islam, along with the majority of the Islamic world, and Hezbollah ascribes to the Shia branch, like Iran, so has longer running ties to the Islamic Republic. Now, Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, is causing growing concerns for regional stability. So this group, known for its backing from Iran, possesses around 150,000 rockets aimed at the northern regions of Israel. Now, experts are warning that if Hezbollah initiates an attack, it could place unprecedented pressure on Israel. And under such circumstances, Israel might deviate from conventional warfare protocols and focus on neutralizing threats emerging from Lebanon's southern border. Now, such actions could have far-reaching consequences by jeopardizing the entire southern border of Lebanon and disrupting crucial supply chain routes. So this conflict could potentially draw Syria into the picture as well. If Syria becomes involved, then Israel might feel compelled to target military bases within Syrian territory, and as a result, Iran's close ties and interests in the region may also be affected. But the implications don't end there. Now, given its strong alliance with Russia, Iran might seek support from its influential partner, Russia. It's important to note that Russia has significant influence in Syrian affairs and previously indicated its support in similar situations to this. So with Russia's involvement, this scenario could escalate rapidly and risk dragging major global players like the United States into a broader conflict. I mean, this could be the catalyst of a World War III. Now, experts emphasize the importance of implementing deterrent measures to avoid triggering a chain reaction leading to an extensive regional war. And equipping Israel with strong military capabilities could be seen as a strategic approach, of course, to enable them to prevent the escalation of conflicts. That would be the way to do it. Now, in these times of uncertainty, it's crucial for regional and global powers to proceed cautiously, acknowledging the intricate network of alliances and interests that have the potential to push the world towards a widespread conflict that would affect all of us. Now, I want to debunk some rumors here because we've been seeing this a lot in the media. We come across just a myriad of falsehoods spread about the Israeli situation. Now, the intent behind these myths, often it's ignorance, or worse, an alignment with the dark forces in this world. So I want to take a look at 6 common myths that we've been seeing circling around the media and other places, and let's look at these myths and let's debunk them. Now, first, also excuse me if you hear some background noise. I will try to remove it in post, but it just started raining where I'm at, and I'm right by a bunch of windows. So anyway, so the first myth that I want to debunk here: Hamas, freedom fighters. We're being told that Hamas are just freedom fighters. the widespread belief that Hamas fights for Palestinian freedom, it's nothing but a fallacy. So, established in 1985, their charter explicitly calls for Israel's annihilation. So, the stark reality is that Hamas's mission is to slaughter as many Jews as possible. And their horrifying actions, ranging from unbridled violence against men, women, and children to their brutal attacks on foreign nationals, including Americans, are a testament to their heinous objectives. So that is myth number one. Myth number two, Israel's so-called occupation of Gaza. This is another blatant lie. Israel made a momentous decision in 2005 to withdraw from Gaza. Every Israeli settlement was dismantled, leaving behind an infrastructure poised to flourish. However, instead of building a progressive society, the people of the majority of the people of Gaza chose Hamas as their leaders, turning Gaza into a hub of terror and hatred against Israel that we see today. So this was not Israel's fault. They were trying for peace, and they have been trying for peace. So they don't occupy Gaza, and this is what their efforts have gotten them. Just attack after attack after attack. Now, myth three. Israel's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. So history proves this absolutely wrong. Israel has always sought peace. There never existed a country named Palestine on the current Israeli lands. Never in existence. However, there have been Jewish states for millennia, well before the advent of Islam. The narrative of Israel's alleged land theft, it's a total distortion of historic events that paints Israel as the aggressor, when in reality they've been the ones just defending their homeland. Myth 4, Israel's denial of a Palestinian state. Now, it's really shocking to note the numerous times Palestinians have been offered their own state, and they rejected it. Every time they reject it, whether it was the Peel Commission of 1937, the UN's partition plan in 1947, the 2000 Camp David Accords, or the offer in 2008 to dismantle all West Bank settlements, every opportunity was declined. And the question remains, why? It's because that's not what they're interested in. Again, think to their charter. They're not interested in coexistence and peace. They're interested in the slaughter of Jews and the total dismantling and overruling of Israel. Myth 5, Israel's indiscriminate attacks. Now, the notion that Israel is heartlessly targeting Palestinian civilians, including children, is another totally baseless claim. Now, while Hamas recklessly attacks, indifferent to casualties, the Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, strictly adhere to their rules of engagement. Hamas, in their vile strategies, they use innocent Gazans as human shields, hoping to exploit the ensuing civilians' casualties for propaganda. That's what they're doing. And believe it or not, you have Americans that are falling for this, instead of just looking at the facts. And they're all too happy to make, Israel, and then by implication America, because typically America supports Israel, as the enemy. And then myth number 6, Israel as an apartheid state. Now, one of the most absurd accusations leveled against Israel is that of it being an apartheid state. In reality, Israel is a melting pot where 20% of its population is Muslim, enjoying the same rights as their Jewish counterparts. And you don't see that same level of tolerance in Gaza or any of the surrounding enemies of Israel. Israel remains one of the few Middle Eastern nations to give Muslim women voting rights. And it's noteworthy to remember that Israel handed over control of the Temple Mount, Judaism's holiest site, to the Islamic Waqf of Jordan. So, to kind of sum this up, Israel's desire for peace has always been clear. The ongoing conflict is not Israel's making, but it stems from a refusal by certain Palestinian factions to recognize the legitimacy of the Jewish state. So true peace will only come when those factions abandon their destructive ambitions against Israel. And as devout Christians and Americans, it's imperative for us to see through this veil of lies and stand with Israel against the forces of darkness. And, it's truly shocking and it's horrifying to witness the ongoing events in Israel following an attack by Hamas terrorists in Gaza. There are differing opinions, of course, regarding Israel's claim to land that was not theirs, but it's essential to acknowledge the historical significance of Israel as a site deeply rooted in both Judaism and Christianity for thousands of years. Many have learned about its designation as the promised land, which this is a terrestrial place, not just a heavenly abode. This is a place on earth, Israel, the promised land. Now, before the reestablishment of Israel, again, like I mentioned before, no nation was known as Palestine. That was actually used as a slur against actual Israel, and still is today. Now, the Philistines, mentioned in biblical records, existed many centuries ago. The people residing in that region then were identified as Jordanian, Egyptian, or Lebanese rather than Palestinian. So contrary to certain beliefs, it's completely inaccurate to assert that Israel took away someone else's homeland. That is a lie, a total fabrication. So the question arises, can Israelis and Palestinians coexist? Well, throughout the years, with support from various nations, including the United States. And I want to mention this again. Israel has embraced advocating for a two-state solution. So we mentioned a few earlier, but in the 1990s, President Bill Clinton proposed a solution that addressed 97% of Yasser Arafat's demands. Yet it was still rejected. Clinton wanted this to be his legacy by aiming to bring peace to the Middle East through this initiative. But of course, he's remembered for something else entirely, and that tends to be his legacy. But that aside, that 3% was their excuse to not accept it. It's because they don't want peace and coexistence. You cannot make peace and coexistence with somebody that rejects peace and coexistence. You can't make peace with somebody who is adamantly convinced that they are going to kill you no matter what the cost. So we are witnessing Hamas launching violent attacks against Israel with graphic visual evidence depicting their just inhuman intensity. They're deliberately targeting Jewish families within neighborhoods. What they use as justification for these actions remains, a subject of debate in politics and in the mainstream media, but we know what it's all about. They say it's a command from a higher power. They say their God told them to do it. Now, on this distressing day, peaceful people worldwide must rally behind the innocent victims of this attack without provocation. It's about time the entire world comes together, firmly opposing terrorism that other governments support. This has to stop immediately. Iran is involved here too, so I want to talk a minute about Iran's involvement before we get to the prophetic stuff. So in light of the recent tensions between our brave U.S. military and Iran, we find ourselves at another crossroads in the volatile Middle East. So according to Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh, a National White House Security Council spokesman, Admiral John Kirby, Iran has taken aggressive actions near the vital Persian Gulf in the Straits of Hormuz. So this vital area close to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Kuwait is crucial for global trade and even peace. So, responding to our allies' calls, our military has stepped up to try to ensure stability. Iran, however, has escalated with acts of piracy, targeting commercial vessels, and jeopardizing oil tankers. Their actions have really made life difficult for nations relying on the waters of the Straits of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. So this is obviously more than concerning. Saying it's concerning is an understatement. We've received threats from Iran, including wartime propaganda videos showcasing their intent to target U.S. naval assets, such as the USS Bataan, which is an amphibious assault ship. and the USS Thomas Kuttner, which is a missile-guided destroyer. So why all this aggression from Iran? Well, they claim they monitor vessels for weapons, drugs, and illegal paraphernalia, but are they really? I mean, our government maintains that these ships sail through international waters, and Iran's aggressive maneuvers force them into Iranian territory, providing a pretense for harassment and theft. It's clear to see for anybody who's paying attention what they're really doing here. So we stand firm. Our global trade partners have sought our protection, and as a nation committed to defending freedom and peace, we've obliged. So with 4,000 committed servicemen and women in the area, we're protecting vital assets, computer equipment, phones, oil, gas, and food, ensuring that the wheels of global trade can keep turning. And of course, we respect sovereignty, but it's clear Iran's discontent with our presence reflects their more significant, horrifying agenda. So while we pray for peace and understanding, it's really important to remember that America stands guard, ensuring that the principles of freedom and fair trade remain unchallenged. So let's get into that's kind of a broad wrap up of a little bit of what's going on, but focused more on the past couple of days. And of course, news is coming out all the time. I mean, I'm recording this at about 2 p.m. Central on Friday, and I got all my notes together and wrote this earlier this morning, starting around 9 o'clock. So by the time this airs tonight, there could be even more development. So it's important to keep up on the news and see what's going on. But I wanted to at least get us somewhat caught up, so now we can talk about the prophetic things. So there's actually quite a few prophecies involving specifically Hamas. Now, as I mentioned before, Hamas is the Hebrew word for violence or cruelty. It comes with a lot of baggage like that. And most times, a lot of times, it just means that. It just means an act of violence. But there are times where it seems like it's calling out a specific group. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due. Dr. Ken Johnson put out an excellent video. It's only about 15 minutes long. It's called The Hamas Prophecies. You should check it out on YouTube, and you should subscribe to him. He's awesome. So some of this information here I got from Dr. Ken Johnson. He and I have worked together in the past, and we've drawn from each other's research quite a bit. So this is nothing new for he and I to do. So I want to make that clear. But so keep in mind that again, most of the time that the word Hamas comes up in the Old Testament in the Bible, it just means violence. But there are a few times, prophetic times, where it seems like it's actually talking about a group, an established group called Hamas, called violence. And isn't that the perfect term for them, for what we see today? So let's take a look at Amos 6, 1 through 5. I'm going to read it and then I'm going to analyze it a little bit. So Amos 6, 1 through 5, and I'm reading from the King James Version, and so there's going to be some Old English in there, but I do that because with that in my Bible studies tool, I can, like through Blue Letter Bible and other places, I can turn on the Strong's Concordance and actually see the original languages, so it helps. But if you want to follow along, you can go to BibleGateway.com. I use that a lot, and you can pick whichever Bible translation you want to use. If you want to use New King James or ESV or NET or whatever. But this is what it says in the KJV. Amos 6, 1 through 5. Woe to them that are at ease in Zion, and trust in the mountains of Samaria, which are named chief to the nations to whom the nation of Israel came. Pass ye unto Calneh and see, and from thence go ye to Hamath the great. Then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Be they better than those kingdoms, or their border greater than your border? Ye that put far away the evil day, and cause the seat of violence to come near, that lie upon beds of ivory, and stretch themselves upon their couches, and eat the lambs out of the flock, and the calves out of the midst of the stall, that chant to the sound of the viol, and intend to themselves instruments of music like David. Okay, so as I mentioned, Dr. Ken Johnson, excuse me, recently brought up some really interesting information regarding this passage. So before we get to the Hamas violence stuff, there is an ancient interpretation of Psalms found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that basically states, and I wrote about this in Lost Prophecies of Qumran, a book that Dr. Ken Johnson actually wrote the foreword to, which I was honored. And Dr. Ken Johnson has written about this as well. But there's an interpretation in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and these were, for those who aren't familiar with the Essenes, just a brief rundown. They were basically they were the section, the sect of Judaism that maintained original Judaism. They didn't get into Pharisee stuff. They didn't get into Sadducee stuff. They went off on their own, and there were Essenes all over Israel in different cities and things, but they maintained the original interpretation of the Old Testament, and they looked forward to the Messiah, to Jesus, for exactly who he is. And that's why you see times in the New Testament, in the Gospels, where Jesus barely says anything, and a whole bunch of people are converted, but then Jesus says a lot of stuff, and then Pharisees and Sadducees really struggle with it. Those people that were converted were likely Essenes, because they saw Jesus fulfilling these prophecies in the way that they understood them. So that's and then they left their writings and their interpretations, their commentaries, their prophecies in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which we have today. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's this interpretation that basically states, if you have a passage in Psalms, this is specific to Psalms, that if you have a passage in Psalms that has an instrument, some kind of instrument, however many strings is on that instrument, in that mentioned instrument, and it's got to be like a prophetic psalm, if it's a prophetic psalm, however many strings actually tells which time period that prophecy is supposed to occur in. So that time period, it's a period of 500 years, and it's called an Ona, which is again, period of 500 years. And the ancient Essenes believed that there would be 14 Onas in total from the creation all the way to the new heaven and new earth. So 14 Onas in total, 7,000 years. Now, the Essenes, in their interpretation, they existed in the 8th Ona, and we, according to them, we exist in the 12th Ona. Now, that's interesting when you consider the fact that the millennial reign is 1,000 years. So 2 Onas long is 1,000 years. You know, add 12 to 2, you get 14. They say 14 complete Onas. So the 12th Ona, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, would be the final Ona before the millennial reign of Christ begins. But before, and they looked at that as like a Sabbath rest. So, you know, they looked at the entire timeline, 7,000 years, and used the example of a week, and that last 1,000 years is the Sabbath rest. So that's the millennial reign. So back to this passage in Amos. At the end, it mentions a stringed instrument called a viol, and that actually translates to the Hebrew word nebel. And this is also sometimes translated to psaltery. But it's the same thing. It comes from the same Hebrew word, nebel. Now, according to Easton's Bible Dictionary, that is a 12-string instrument. So if the Dead Sea Scrolls are correct, and if that holds up all throughout the Bible and not just in Psalms, and it doesn't say in the Dead Sea Scrolls that this is only for Psalms, we just see examples of it in Psalms. So if that extends throughout the whole Old Testament, or maybe even the whole Bible, then this passage in Amos would have significance in our time today, in our 12th Ona. Again, this is research that I came across from my good friend Dr. Ken Johnson, and so I want to give credit where it's due, and I did write about it in Lost Prophecies of Qumran, so you can check that out if you want. So let's notice the progression in Amos 6 here. So Amos 6:1, it says, "Woe to Zion," which is Israel. So something bad is going to happen to Israel. Then Amos 6:2, it says, "First go to Calneh, then to Hamath, then finally it lands on Gath of the Philistines," which that's actually Gaza. That's in Gaza. Then it talks about the seat of violence. So a seat of violence in Gaza. Now, the word seat refers to a governmental position of authority, like a seat of authority. So it's talking about the government or authority of violence. And of course, violence here is the word Hamas. So it's saying that something will happen when the leadership of Hamas from Gaza will come near, and it has something to do with an evil day. So this could help explain what we're seeing in the world today. Very, very interesting. Another one we can find in Ezekiel 7, verses 7 and 11. Really the whole passage, but we're going to focus in on 7 and 11 first. So Ezekiel 7, chapter 7, verse 7, verse 11. And we'll look at that whole passage. And if you're wanting to pull that up, I'll let you do that. I'm going to take a drink. So I get thirsty talking so much. But so let's first look at these two verses, then we'll look at the context in between. Verse 7 states, "The morning is come unto thee, O thou that dwellest in the land. The time is come, the day of trouble is near, and not the sounding again of the mountains. Violence is risen up into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, nor of their multitude, nor of any of theirs, neither shall there be wailing for them." So the day of trouble mentioned here is a term that refers to the tribulation period, and we see that a lot in the Old Testament. So it's saying that the tribulation is almost there, but not there yet. And in that time, violence, or Hamas, has risen up into a rod of wickedness. And rod can refer to how a government leads. Like we hear the term rules with a rod of iron. But here it says that they have risen up into a rod of wickedness. Now, isn't that a perfect way to describe Hamas of our day? First, they were basically nothing. Then they rose up into a leadership and governing rule of absolute wickedness. But then it says, none of them will ultimately remain, and no one will miss them when they are gone. So there's something else that we can look at that shows that God's going to ultimately protect Israel. And we know that comes with the return of Christ. But what happens before then? Well, we should read the rest of the chapter, because I believe that this describes the tribulation. So let's start in Ezekiel 7:5, and we're going to continue on through the end of the chapter. And I'll just provide some commentary as we go along. "Thus saith the Lord, an evil and only evil, behold, is come. An end is come, the end is come. It watcheth for thee, behold, it is come. The morning is come unto thee, O thou that dwellest in the land. The time is come, the day of trouble is near, and not the sounding again of mountains." So we can see by the repetition, the day is come, the day is come, that day of trouble is here. So it seems like it's saying the day of trouble is like right at the doorstep. And here's how to recognize it. Verse 8, "Now I will shortly," and this part I believe is talking about Israel during the tribulation, this next section here. And it's important to realize the tribulation is all about basically sifting out unbelieving Israel from true Israel. The Israel that's going to accept the Antichrist and become an enemy of God, as opposed to the true believing remnant. And we see all of these plagues and disasters, really judgments, come upon Israel for their disbelief. So I believe that this part that we're going to look at is talking about the tribulation period and God's relationship with Israel, why the tribulation is happening, how it's going to happen, what the purpose is, and that yes, God will ultimately protect Israel, but it's it's true Israel. It's Israel that accepts Him, believing Israel that hasn't rejected the Messiah that was sent for Israel. So, and the world, Jesus Christ. So, verse 8: Now will I shortly pour out my fury upon thee. So God's saying that shortly he's going to pour his fury out on Israel. Now remember, where we left off, it said that day is almost there, but not quite there yet. So he's going to talk about, God's going to talk about what it's going to be like in the tribulation. Now I will shortly pour out my fury upon thee, and accomplish mine anger unto thee, and I will judge thee according to thy ways, and will recompense thee for all thine abominations. And mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. I will recompense thee according to thy ways and thine abominations that are in the midst of thee. And ye shall know that I am the Lord that smiteth. Behold the day, behold, it is come. The morning is gone forth. The rod hath blossomed, pride hath budded. Violence is risen up into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, nor of their multitude, nor of theirs, neither shall there be wailing for them. Now I believe that happens at the end of the tribulation, when Jesus comes back and slaughters all of Israel's enemies. Verse 12, the time is come, the day draweth near. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. For the seller shall not return to that which is sold, although they were yet alive. For the vision is touching the whole multitude thereof, which shall not return, neither shall any strength himself in the iniquity of his life. They have blown the trumpet even to make all ready, but none goeth to battle, for my wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. The sword is without, and the pestilence, and the famine within. He that is in the field shall die with the sword, and he that is in the city, famine and pestilence shall devour him. But they that escape of them shall escape, and shall be on the mountains like doves of the valley, all of them mourning, every one for his iniquity. All hands shall be feeble, and all knees shall be weak as water. They also shall gird themselves with sackcloth, and horror shall cover them, and shame shall be put upon all faces, and baldness upon all their heads. They shall cast their silver into the streets, and their gold shall be removed, and their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. So I believe this is when Jesus comes back. They shall not sanctify their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is their stumbling block of their iniquity. As for the beauty of his ornament, he set in it majesty, but they made the images of their abominations and of their detestable things therein. I believe that's talking about the temple. Therefore have I set it far away from them, and I will give it into the hands of the strangers for a prey, P-R-E-Y, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall pollute it. I believe that's talking about the abomination of desolation. My face will I turn also from them, and they shall pollute my secret place, for the robber shall enter into it and defile it. Again, I believe that's probably the Antichrist, probably the abomination of desolation. Make a chain, for the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence, full of Hamas. The city is full of Hamas at this point. Now again, this is during the tribulation, and so we see that the city, it's either just full of violence as a concept, or, given the context we were given before, the seat of violence, the leadership of Hamas. Perhaps by this time they have made it in and infiltrated. Because again, there is a covenant that the Antichrist confirms, but that covenant is broken halfway through at the abomination of desolation, and maybe that's when this massive influx of Hamas happens. Wherefore I will bring the worst of the heathen, we're on verse 24 for those following along. Wherefore I will bring the worst of the heathen, and they shall possess their houses, and I will make the pomp of the strong to cease, and their holy places shall be defiled. Destruction cometh, and they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. Mischief shall come upon mischief, and rumor shall be upon rumor. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and counsel from the ancients. The king shall mourn, and the prince shall be clothed with desolation, and the hands of the people of the land shall be troubled. I will do unto them after their way, and according to their deserts will I judge them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. All right, so again, I believe that that's talking about the tribulation, and we see Hamas all over that. Now, we're not at the tribulation yet, of course, so we don't know how this is going to play out, but I believe we could see this as birth pangs or something that could trigger a larger event that could eventually lead into the tribulation. And there's even more evidence, like the Hamas flag, that I want to talk about, because the colors are very interesting. But before we move on to the Hamas flag and the four horsemen prophecy from Revelation, I want to fill you in on something a bit more closer to home. So I've always been passionate about bringing truth to the forefront, and now more than ever, our Christian community needs a platform to discuss pressing issues openly. There is no denying that we live in a time where censorship quickly has become the norm. We've seen it. Voices silenced, crucial topics are skirted around, particularly when they blend biblical truth with politics or current events. But what if we could actually change that narrative? So I'm teaming up with my good friend Zach Drew, whom many of you might remember from the Jim Bakker Show, but he's hosting the Zach Drew Show now. He runs IGBY International Ministries. Zach's heart for the Lord and the gospel is immense. Yet, despite his dedication, the limitations of working within a 501c3 have restricted the breadth of his message. Biblical truths and political events are directly relevant to our faith, and we're compelled to avoid discussing them. So why the 501c3? Well, unfortunately, it's the only way to get on Christian broadcast television. It's the only way to spread your message in that way. So it comes with limitations. And there's certain things that we can't safely talk about, which is awful. And so on the 501c3 side, you have censorship. Then on the free platform YouTube, that side, there's censorship. Censorship all around. So that's where our vision for Daily Renegade truly was birthed. So many of you know Daily Renegade now as basically a website that I've been keeping for years through Wix, which has not been super helpful for us. It needs a revamping. It needs a redo, and we need that as a Christian community to be able to really talk and interact with each other, and for me to be able to say whatever the Lord puts on my heart, and for Zach to say whatever the Lord puts on his heart. And this is why we're partnering together on this. So Daily Renegade is not just another video streaming service. This is a movement. It's a subscription-based video streaming platform combined with a vibrant social media community. Imagine being a part of a space where there's absolute freedom to discuss the Bible, politics, and current events without the looming shadow of censorship. Our dream is for Daily Renegade to host shows such as the Sharpening Report that you're watching right now, the Zach Drew podcast, Peck Perspective, and even more enlightening content in the future. So this is more than just entertainment. It's an opportunity for growth, connection, and spiritual edification. One feature that we're really thrilled about is the Renegade Report, which is a continually updated newsletter seamlessly integrated into Daily Renegade, into the website, into the apps. And speaking of that, I'll get to that in a minute, but we also have envisioned a community space that will function like a blend of Facebook and Telegram without the censorship, allowing all members to post, comment, and truly connect with each other and us as hosts. I'm going to be on there all the time, way more than I'm on Facebook or any social media. Also, our videos will come with downloadable PDFs that include the show notes for that episode, including content that we couldn't fit into the show. So you'll get references, you'll get the verses, you'll get the transcript, all the show notes, including things that don't make it into the show. But, dreams, especially ones of this magnitude, require support. And this is more than just a dream. I believe this is a calling. I believe that God has been really calling me towards Daily Renegade for years now. And this whole partnership with Drew, me leaving Skywatch and working with Drew, Zach Drew now, that I think that was all part of God's call towards this Daily Renegade partnership, because we are going to do something. This is going to completely revolutionize how we as the church can communicate with each other, connect with each other, edify, support, pray for each other, lift each other up, really, really be the church that we're meant to be. But again, that requires support. And so to ensure that we offer the best experience and that this venture stands the test of time, Zach and I need to raise $25,000. This amount will cover the essential web development costs, marketing, app creation, and vital equipment for our brand new shows. Zach and I have been blessed with the trust of many within the Christian media community. This is not new to us. Zach and I are very, very well versed in Christian media. We see some of the problems with it, and we see solutions. We believe that God is leading us to those solutions. We deeply believe that Daily Renegade is our most effective way to serve Jesus Christ and the church in this age, at this time, right now, during the strifes and the struggles all of us as Christians are contending against. Just the fact that we can't say what we want to say in America, of all places. So this is our chance together to reclaim our voice in a world that's increasingly under threat. Daily Renegade will not be a 501c3. It is now an LLC, which means, yes, technically it's a business, but with that model, yeah, we're not getting government support. We're not going to be able to put our shows on Christian broadcast television, but we will have the absolute freedom to say whatever we want to say. We'll be able to connect with you guys without you worrying about, censorship or not seeing our posts or having your posts removed, or we won't have to worry about any of that. So if you feel led, please support this endeavor at givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade. I have that linked in the description below. givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade. And even if you can't contribute financially, your prayers for this project are invaluable. So please keep us in prayer. With faith and unity, we can pave the way for a brighter, uncensored future in Christian media. So that link again is givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade, and you can find it again in the description of this video below. And if you have any questions or concerns about it, you can email me directly at joshpeckdisclosure@gmail.com, and I will be happy to talk with you about this project. So again, please keep us in prayer. Pray over this this whole movement, this whole endeavor that Zach and I are involved in, and again, please donate at givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade. We got a $25,000 goal, and if we can match that, we are good, and we'll be able to really do this thing for you right. So that's what we want to do. That's our heart, and we would ask for you to partner with us and help us out. Okay, let's talk about the Four Horsemen and the Hamas flag. Did you know that the flag of Hamas has the exact same colors, no more, no less, the exact same colors as the Four Horsemen of Revelation? So let's take a look at Revelation 6, starting in verse 1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, and again, this is in the tribulation. This is like probably the very beginning of the tribulation, when this all starts. So I'll start again. Verse 1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him and had a bow and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast saying, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I saw the third beast say, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Verse 7, and when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Now what's really interesting here is that these horses actually show up in the Old Testament as well. So in the book of Zechariah, we see chariots of horses described very similarly to those of the book of Revelation. And an interesting thing to note here is in both books, the descriptions of these horses are found in chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. In both Revelation, it's Revelation 6, 1 through 8, and it's Zechariah 6, 1 through 8. I mean, what are the chances of that? I don't believe that's a coincidence. So let's start with Zechariah 6, 1. It reads, and I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. So we see here 4 chariots. Next we come to the horses themselves. Now this part can get a little bit involved and deep, especially in the colors, but I think it's important to have this information and, you know, at least to be able to consider it. So Zechariah 6, 2 through 3 reads, in the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the 4th chariot grizzled and bay horses. That's where it gets interesting. So here we have 3 of the 4 colored horses mentioned in the Revelation 6 account. There are red, black, and white mentioned here in Zechariah. However, instead of pale, we're going to get to that in a second, instead of pale, there are grizzled and bay horses. So the word grizzled comes from the Hebrew word barad, meaning spotted, as if with hail. Probably meaning like hail-colored, like an off-white. Now the word bay comes from the Hebrew word amos, meaning of strong color, i.e. red. So the color red is important to make special mention here. Because we're dealing with 3 different shades. And by the way, with that description, I'm going with red because I think it does signify something important. But in that description, in that definition, amos meaning of strong color, i.e. red, I don't know if it's just using red as an example or if it's saying this is the strong red. So if it is of strong color, that could be green, and that could have to do with what we're going to talk about in a minute. If not, let's go with the example that it gives, and let's say it's red. And so I just want to, because in this description, I go with the interpretation that it's red. But I just wanted to make mention that this definition might just be using that as an example. So keep that in the back of your mind. But let's go with red because that's in the definition. And let's see what we can pull out if it's red. And even if it's some other color like green, then there's even more significance, and that'll be easy for you to piece together once we get through this section here. So let's go with red. The color red, now that's important to make special mention here because we are dealing with 3 different shades. So first, chariots in Zechariah 6:2 were red horses. And the word there means a ruddy color, like such as like a darker red of blood. This is the same color mentioned in Zechariah 1:8, which we'll get to in a bit. Now the next shade called bay is like a stronger bright red. And then the last red mentioned in the Revelation 6 account of the red horse is more of a fiery red. So between Zechariah and Revelation, we have like 3 shades of red here. Now, looking back to Zechariah chapter 1, we can gain some more insight as to what these horses are and what their purpose is. And we'll also see a contrast between these horses and Revelation. So, Zechariah 1, 8 through 11 reads, I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse. And he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom, and behind him were their red horses, speckled and white. Then I said, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will show thee what these be. And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom the Lord hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest. Okay, so the horses here were red, the ruddy red. They were also speckled, the Hebrew word saruk, meaning like a bright red, like bay. And then we also get the color white. So next we're told that they were sent to walk to and fro through the earth, and in doing so, the earth was at rest. So this is confirmed in Zechariah 6, 5 through 7, where we're told the four chariots are four spirits of the heavens, possibly the same as the four living creatures of Ezekiel chapter 1. There might be a connection there. But we learn that the black horses go into the north country and the white follow them. Then we learn that the grizzled, which is, again, the spotted off-white, those horses go into the south country. Next, in verse 7, we're told that the bay, the bright red horses, walked to and fro the earth. So here I want to mainly focus on the grizzled and bay horses, or that's to say, the spotted off-white horses and the bright red horses. These horses are grouped together in the fourth chariot, signifying that they work together for a common purpose. Now we see that the bright red horse's purpose is to walk to and fro the earth to keep the earth still and at rest. We learn that the spotted off white horses go to the south country for an undetermined reason. And the horses are described here. They were sent by God from heaven and are fulfilling God's purposes. So you could think of these as like, these are the good guys. Now let's look at the Revelation 6 account of the horses. Now, the red horse in Revelation is of a different shade altogether from Zechariah's description. The red of Zechariah was either ruddy or bright red, and the red horse of Revelation is more of a fiery red. This could be similar to the bright red of Zechariah, but it's not exactly the same. And we see these horses of Revelation bring all different kinds of devastation upon the world, whereas the horses, at least the red and white of the book of Zechariah, were meant to keep the earth still and at rest. We have an antithesis here. So we need to keep in mind, for everything God has, Satan has an evil and inferior duplicate. So I believe we're seeing an example of this here. Zechariah's horses were of God. Revelation, those horses seem to be more demonic in nature. So to confirm this, we only need to compare the description of the purposes of the horses. We read the red horses of Zechariah were to keep the earth still and at rest, whereas the fiery red horse of Revelation takes peace from the earth. And we get that from Revelation 6:4. We really see something interesting when we compare the grizzled and bay horses of the book of Zechariah with the pale horse of Revelation. Now, that English word for pale used in the Revelation 6 account, it's translated from the Greek word chloros, and it means green, like a greenish green or pale. So that's why I mentioned the word green earlier, that the one in Zechariah of strong color could mean green. But even still, we still see an antithesis, because if that is of strong color, a strong green, this is like a pale green. So again, for this one in Revelation, everything that God has, Satan's got this inferior duplicate. It's basically like a bargain bin knockoff. You could think of it like that. Now it's the same word used to describe the color of the grass in Revelation 8:7, this chloros, and the any green thing in Revelation 9:4. So there's a compelling theory that the green color signified here might represent something having to do with Islam, being that the official color of Islam is green. This horse, from the Greek word used, can be defined as green and or pale, Pale can really just be another way of saying off-white or hail-colored, just like the grizzled horses of the book of Zechariah. So instead of having a mixture of multiple red and off-white or pale horses, we have a single horse where the off-white or pale is the same, but the red's been replaced with green. That means that this horse does not take the God-given job of the red horse from Zechariah, which again was to walk to and fro to keep the earth still and at rest, but it still holds that of the off-white or pale grizzled, saying that it went forth toward the south country. So it keeps the part of the color that has something to do with the south country, but replaces the peace color from Zechariah, red, with the opposite color, green. So something having to do with taking peace away, and something having to do with the south country. So I believe that the pale horse of Revelation, again, it could be signifying something having to do with Islam. Now, first, we see that the God-purposed red of the horses in the book of Zechariah is replaced by the color green. And again, that strong color in Zechariah, if that is green, this concept still applies. The original purpose was to bring peace. God's purpose was to bring peace. This is a pale version of that, and it does the absolute opposite. It takes peace away. So we have the red, the strong red, possibly red color horses in the book of Zechariah, or possibly green, but let's go with red. We see that that's replaced by, again, green, the established color of Islam, a religion that worships Allah. And here we can see how God, his purpose, red, has been replaced by Allah, green, for the purposes of this passage. So in the book of Zechariah, the red horses and the pale spotted horses are separate entities that are working together. In the book of Revelation, there is one horse signified by both the green and the pale. So comparing with Zechariah, it is probably a green horse with pale spots, since the pale color in Zechariah is spotted. Now what's interesting is if you look at the flag of Saudi Arabia, which is south of Israel, again, something having to do with the south country, Saudi Arabia is south of Israel, directly south. Their flag is a green background with a pale emblem, like a spotted emblem. It's a green background with pale spots. You know, now it's a moon and stars and stuff, but it sounds just like this horse. I mean, it's green with pale spots. Islam also began in Saudi Arabia, where their prophet Muhammad was born, lived, and died. So the present flag of Islam is a solid green color with a pale crescent moon and a five-pointed star. This is the flag used nowadays, but that hasn't always been the official Islamic flag. Now, I believe that the south country that the grizzled or the pale-spotted horses traveled to in Zechariah 6:6, and again, these would have been the good guys in the time of Zechariah. This is actually Saudi Arabia, and that's the birth country of Islam. Now, given this in-depth look at the horses of Revelation and comparing them with the horses of Zechariah, I believe that the pale horse mentioned in the book of Revelation does signify either Islam as a whole, radicalized Islam, or maybe certain factions of Islam, but I believe it has something to do with Islam. We can see further proof of this in the description of the rider of the pale horse of Revelation. We read that the rider's name is Death, and hell follows him, and he has power over a fourth of the earth, and we get that from Revelation 6:8. Now, Radical Islam is a religion of death, as their main goal is jihad, meaning to die in the name of Allah, usually by taking out Christians and Jews in suicide bombings. If a person involves themselves in jihad, they're clearly, obviously not a follower of Jesus Christ. So the only, and that's, Jesus is the only way to eternal life, right? So this would mean that the only place left for them to go when they die is hell. So first death, then hell follows. Jihad, suicide bombing, first death, then hell follows. They die. They're not going to paradise with 72, however many virgins. They're going to find themselves in hell. So just like the riders signify, you have death and then hell follows. Also, it as it stands now, depending on what statistic you look at, but roughly a quarter of the world's population follows the Islamic religion. And what does it say about that horse? That horseman? And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth. And we see that now. Now, again, I don't think this means that we're in the tribulation now, but we got to be close, because those numbers have risen to that point where, again, and it depends on what statistic, and it's not exact, but generally a fourth part of the world ascribes to some form of Islam. And here we're told that this horse is given a fourth part of the earth. So I think we're seeing another birth pang here. It's absolutely astounding. Now, putting all this together, the flag of Hamas specifically has all the colors of the four horsemen: white, red, black, and green. It doesn't have any extra colors. There are no colors that are removed. It is made of those four colors, Hamas. So let's look at the passage again, and let's think about Hamas. Think about what we're seeing in our day today. And again, I'm not saying that we're in the tribulation now. I don't believe that at all. But I'm saying that this probably is a sign. It's probably a birth pang. So again, let's look at this again, starting Revelation 6, starting in verse 2. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth, conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red. Okay, so again, that first horse, he went forth conquering and to conquer. The next one is red. Power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. Now that kill one another. If this is Islam, there's a long-standing conflict between Sunni and Shia Muslims, and there's a lot of bloodshed there. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Now, that's obviously talking about the economy. And with war brings devastating economical consequences. I mean, with war, and all the money being funneled into war, that's never great for the economy. I mean, that hurts the citizens that have to participate in the economy of that country or countries that are involved in any way. So think about us. Think about America. Think about what this current conflict in Israel could do to our already failing and struggling economy. And when he had opened the fourth seal, we're in verse 7 now, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Now, again, all of that, you could say, man, Hamas really exemplifies all of that. All of it. By the way, that beasts of the earth, there's some debate what that means. It is interesting to note that there is a rise in animal attacks. It could just be that. I don't think that would have anything to do with Hamas. But there's another theory that I first heard from Sharon Gilbert, that when you dig down into the Greek, there seems to be this connotation of something small, something tiny, and she said it could be a virus, uh, some kind of pathogen, and it could be that these foreign invaders bring disease with them, and that makes sense because we see that all throughout history, that when somebody from some faraway country tries to integrate into another one, they tend to bring disease with them. Um, so if and there was I wrote a blog post years ago when ISIS was, and this was during the Obama presidency. ISIS was gaining some stronghold, but they were carrying like diseases with them, like Ebola and stuff. Um, and Sharon Gilbert has an excellent book on that, by the way, as well. But so there seems to be some kind of pestilence or disease attached with this, which again would make sense. Now, again, does this mean that the four horsemen have been released and seals are currently being broken? I personally don't believe that. I know some do, and that's fine. We're all Christian brothers and sisters, and we all love each other. I don't think so, but I do believe what we're seeing is a birth pang, meaning a type or a small example of a future fulfillment. So, for example, Jesus tells us that earthquakes will increase leading up to the tribulation. Then in the tribulation, we see enormous worldwide earthquakes that devastates the whole planet. We also see cosmic disturbances like eclipses and a third part of the sky being blotted out. Well, considering birth pangs, it's like all the prophecies we see in the tribulation, leading up to the tribulation, we get little examples of those. It's like, get ready, it's happening. And they call it birth pangs because that's what giving birth is like. You get contractions, and they happen more and more frequently with greater intensity until the baby's finally born. So I believe that's what we're seeing. And talking about the cosmic disturbances, if you're watching this as it's premiering, we actually might have another birth pang that's about to happen tomorrow, Saturday, at the time of this premiere. But it's a big one that we should all be able to see. But before we get to that, we mentioned the black horse, which is all about economic turmoil, and we have really seen it majorly in the past few years. Many experts are anticipating the soon collapse of the economy. We keep hearing that over and over and over again. Now, if you've tuned into my YouTube shows or even just read the signs of the times, our time today, you know we live in a season of undeniable economic instability. I mean, everyone's feeling it. Everyone. Now, while I firmly believe in the promises of the Lord, I also recognize the importance of being responsible stewards of the resources that He's blessed us with. We're supposed to store up when things are plenty for the famine that's to come, and I believe that famine is probably coming. Now, in Revelation 6 that we looked at before, the black horse prophecy speaks of a time when economic hardships will be absolutely rampant. But now while some may see the troubling economic indicators today as just a coincidence, I think, again, these are birth pangs, heralding a more significant crisis. Now, a birth pang can still be devastating, absolutely devastating. Think about the Great Depression. I believe that was a birth pang for the worldwide economic turmoil that's going to go on in the tribulation. So just because it's a birth pang doesn't mean that we shouldn't take it seriously. Lives are ruined over certain birth pangs. And speaking of which, I believe that these birth pangs are going to herald a more significant crisis. And now, while I ardently believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, and if you don't, that's okay. We love you. We want you here. If you're mid-trib, post-trib, pre-wrath, no trib at all, whatever you are, we are so glad you're here, and we don't hold judgment. I am not one of these people that likes bashing people that have other viewpoints. I can't stand that. I think that is a cancer on the church, and I do not engage in it. So I love you, and I'm glad you're here. But while I believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, I do not see that as an excuse to not be prepared. Because think about this. Let's not forget that believers, Christians, still lived through the Great Depression, and no rapture saved them from those trying times. So that shows this could happen. So let's set the rapture aside. Our responsibility is not just to await Christ's return, but to wisely safeguard God's provisions for ourselves and our children while we're still here. We need to take care of what He's given us. And this brings me to a significant point about our current financial system. Currency versus real money. So we got to know what we're dealing with here. Now, while widely used, our dollar, it's really just a currency subject to inflation and the whims of global markets. It's not real money in the way that silver is. Silver is extremely stable. Our American dollar is not. So to illustrate this, if you kept like let's say $1,000 in cash since the late 1960s, you got $1,000 in cash on you, you put it under your bed, and it just sat there till now. Now, inflation would have eroded its purchasing power drastically. $1,000 would have got you, it had more value back then than it does now, because of inflation and all that stuff. Now, in a stark contrast, if you had invested in the 60s, the 1960s, that $1,000 in silver, if you took that $1,000 and just bought silver and put that under your bed, today that would be worth a staggering $28,000. I mean, huge. That's what it would be worth. That's how much purchasing power it would have in our market today. Such is the power and stability of actual assets like silver, things God actually gave us out of the earth. He created the earth with this stuff in it, and that's for us. So, knowing the prophecies, knowing the birth pangs, knowing the things that are coming up, knowing the times that we're living in, seeing the season of the time that we're living in, and basically everybody universally agrees that the American economy is in trouble. How can we make a wise choice in our uncertain times? Well, the solution is simple, I think. It's by converting a portion of your savings, retirement funds, 401ks, and more, or all of it, into silver. There's even a discreet way that you could get this metal shipped to your doorstep if that's what you want, or you can have it protected in a secure facility provided by the same people supplying you with the silver. Now, even more fascinating is that many don't realize you can actually convert your IRA or your 401k or retirement or savings or anything into physical silver, and that avoids all the pitfalls of a volatile fiat system that is exceedingly vulnerable to hyperinflation, again, which we have been seeing a lot lately. Now, of all the choices that are out there, and there's a lot of them, I obviously haven't investigated every single one, but I found one that I trust. I found one that I like. There is only one company that I have entrusted with my investments in this regard, and this is the Christian-led, so these are brothers and sisters in Christ, that see this as a ministry effort, not as a business, but the Christian-led Cornerstone Asset Metals. I've been working with these guys for years. I've experienced their integrity and expertise firsthand. They're aware of the prophecies. They are just like you and me. They are brothers and sisters in Christ. And I believe that when the storms hit our economy, those of us who chose to invest in silver through our Christian brothers at Cornerstone will stand firm, and we will be so grateful that we did. So for your sake and your family's future, I feel like I would be irresponsible if I didn't mention this to you. I just urge you to just go visit cornerstoneassetmetals.com, Click on the link in the description below. I have it in there. And request your free silver report. Totally free, no strings attached, so there's no commitment right away. Learn about it, talk to them. They'll talk to you, and they're wonderful people. And also remember to tell them that I sent you, because that does help. We have a strong partnership with Cornerstone Asset, and we like partnering with Christian companies that we know and love and trust. That's why I don't pitch a whole lot of things on this show. I've got a couple of things that I believe in, but I don't pitch a whole lot of stuff, and that's why. But I really believe in Cornerstone Asset Metals. I really believe that if you are able, if you have a retirement, if you have a 401k, if you have just savings of any kind, it is time. Put it in silver. You can always put it back to real money anytime you need it, and it's a really easy process. They take care of you. They've been taking care of me, and they'll do the same for you. Tell them that I sent you, Josh Peck. Even online, if you go to their website, there's a section, how did you hear about us? Just Josh Peck, Daily Renegade, tell them we sent you. And their financial experts are ready to guide you on the best protective measures for your savings in these turbulent times. Because maybe not, maybe something that's good for someone else might not be good for you. They will guide you through all that. And again, they see this as a ministry, not a business. So they're not just trying to make the most amount of money possible out of this. They are really dedicated to helping and serving our brothers and sisters in Christ during these last days. That's where their heart is. And believe me, nobody can hide their crazy forever. If you've ever met somebody who they seem really cool at first, and then after a while they get nuts, it's usually about a few months, like at most, before you find out, oh, there's something really off. I've been working with these guys for years, and there are no red flags. I mean, they're clean and great, and I love them, and I consider them family, and we want to welcome you into that family as well. So, and they can really, really help. I want you to be able to protect your assets. Again, it's not about just making money. It is about protecting what you have, what God has given you, and not letting it fall subject to inflation and the collapse of the economy when there's a really easy option available right here, and it's free. So again, their financial experts are ready to guide you. Just go to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. You can click on the link in the description below. So let's be wise, let's be prepared, and above all, let's trust in the Lord while being responsible stewards of the treasures that He has granted us. At the very least, keep it in prayer. Okay, so another birth pain that we might be seeing has been called the Ring of Fire eclipse. That if you're watching this Friday night, October 12th, Friday night, 2023, this is set to, or no, today's Friday the 13th, because of course it is. So tomorrow, Saturday the 14th of October, there's going to be a rare eclipse called the Ring of Fire eclipse. Now, when John, of course, one of the apostles, wrote Revelation on the island of Patmos, he described cosmic disturbances that would indicate the end times. So again, on Saturday, tomorrow, October 14th, 2023, North America will witness a celestial event similar to these prophecies. It's an annular, not annual, an annular solar eclipse that creates a ring of fire in the sky. It's rare, but it does happen. Revelation 6:12, it's mentioned, I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. So I think we're seeing, okay, while this annular eclipse, this does not directly fulfill those descriptions. Again, think birth pangs. It can remind us believers about significant cosmic changes foretold in the Bible. In the book of Genesis, God said that He created the sun, moon, and stars for signs. Now, we're not talking about astrology. We're not talking about wacky stuff here. Signs that are already established in the Bible. And of course, eclipses and things like that, we see that. So it's a sign of our times. What is this signifying? Well, we might find out. Does that mean that something's going to happen tomorrow? No, not necessarily. But we could see it as like a warning bell, like, hey, something's coming. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this is happening during this Israel-Hamas conflict. So this celestial wonder will grace the skies of 8 U.S. states, ranging from Oregon to Texas, after approximately 11 years since a similar event occurred in 2012. And remember, in 2012, there was all that talk about the end of the world. Again, I don't think this is a coincidence. Now, unlike in prophecies, where the sun completely darkens, an annular solar eclipse leaves a thin ring of fire as the moon appears slightly smaller than the sun without fully covering it. Now, while it's not exactly what is mentioned in Revelation, this imagery is remarkable, and it echoes how cosmic disturbances are depicted in biblical texts. So scriptures hint at precise celestial alignments similar to what occurs during a solar eclipse, where the new moon is positioned precisely between the Earth and the sun. And the moon's orbit around the Earth it's not a perfect circle, which causes its distance from us to change. So this is a remarkable example of the cosmos' intricate design, of course, suggesting a higher power's work. It's amazing to me that there are lots of scientists, astrophysicists that can look at this and think that was all done by chance. But so tomorrow, a significant portion of North and Central America and parts of South America will witness this extraordinary event as a reminder of something important and significant. And I believe that there's prophetic significance to this stuff. However, only within a specific path stretching from Oregon to Brazil will people see the complete ring of fire, leaving its celestial mark on those lands. So the most prolonged duration of this phenomenon, lasting 5 minutes and 17 seconds, can be observed off the coasts of Nicaragua and Costa Rica, genuinely remarkable places that will be closer to this heavenly spectacle. Now, numerous major cities across the Americas will experience varying degrees of the eclipse. However, only San Antonio will witness the full ring of fire. So this occurrence might prompt one to contemplate Joel 2:31. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming great and awesome day of the Lord. Now, following this event, another annular eclipse is expected in 2024. That one will be visible from locations ranging from the Pacific Ocean to Easter Island with its enigmatic Maui statues. So when believers see these heavenly signs, it reminds us that a divine plan guides our world. God is here for us. God sees, God knows. God loves us. It reinforces the significance of God's teachings, including the prophecies mentioned in Revelation, which remain relevant all throughout history. So believers are often, encouraged to stay vigilant and wise to the signs of the time and that we live in. And while it's crucial to approach such occurrences with a balanced mindset, we want to avoid hasty predictions, of course, but it's also important to appreciate the marvels of God's creation and the intricate patterns that remind us of His timeless promises and prophecies. So, with that is all I have for you tonight. I would love to know what you think about any and all of the things discussed in today's program. Please leave a comment, share this video around, visit the links in the description below. And let's band together and really be the church that we're meant to be. And I think we can do that even in these times, even when things are difficult. So I love you all, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the Sharpening Report. And until next time, take care and God bless.